because he was bringing up an issue that I cared about, but I didn't even know it, until he said it.
So I think a good candidate would have, be passionate and have issues that they really want to solve and policies that they're willing to fight for.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of Social Discord, part 2 of The Young and the Political. I'm Dalen Turk.
I'm Kara Sibo.
And I'm Curtis Medina.
All right, so this is part 2 of our episode on the young and the political, young people participating in politics. And Curtis, why don't you, I know you had some things that you wanted to discuss at the end of the previous episode before we head in here with Daniel Carlino, but let us know what was on your mind and what you wanted to touch base on real quick.
Yeah, definitely. So in the last episode, we talked a lot about, sort of the disconnect between the average age of Congress and the makeup of the U.S. currently. I believe we're somewhere around 30% millennial or younger in this country, and yet we're a lot of the younger voice is not really being heard in politics, not being taken seriously. When a young person does run, like AOC. They're kind of scrutinized for kind of stupid things. They're made fun of as far as, not having enough experience and all that. And yet on the other end, we get widely criticized for not doing enough to make a difference. So my main hope is that if somebody is out there that's listening, especially if you're in the, under 40 or so crowd, that a part of these younger generations, that you'll hear this and you'll be more motivated to actually consider running, give it a real shot, and even if you don't necessarily say win the first time, that you'll try again, you'll learn from your mistakes, and you'll be a part of this conversation, because I think we all really need your voice in that. And there's an article on, I don't know how to say that, AXIOS. How do you say that? Axios?
Axios? That's what I would assume.
Yeah, okay. That's what I always said, but I didn't want to say it wrong. From Axios, from an article from 2018, it said that about 700 millennial candidates are running in 2018, and approximately 6,000 state legislative races. And so now we're in 2020, but this is from the last, I guess you'd say major election. Most of the millennial candidates that were running in 2018 were Democrats, and that it said that if a huge wave of those people had won, the average age would have lowered from like 67 down to 56. So it would have been more better representation, I guess, even if it's only a decade.
And you constantly, there have been so many stories coming out now when it comes to elections of, you hear this young person coming in, 35 years old, and they beat out, this person who's held their seat for 18 years. It seems like that's been happening more and more often. Well, and
I don't want to turn this into an ageist show either. So I mean, there is an aspect of me when I see that I'm like, hell yeah, good, that we're getting better representation. But at the same time, there's, if Bernie Sanders taught us anything, it's that, it doesn't really matter what your age is. You could still, identify with a lot of very modern progressive ideas. So it's not so, so at no point do I want to make it sound like it's just about voting someone young, over someone older, because they might be the better candidate.
Mm-hmm. And that's fair.
Yeah. The other thing that same article was talking about, it's the bigger picture it was trying to paint, was it said the millennials are most likely to identify as liberal. What was the other thing? And they're more likely to be bipartisan than their older counterparts.
Right.
So right now we have a little bit of a struggle, because anytime that somebody is running that's younger, you assume that they're probably more liberal, but that's really not the point of what I'm trying to say, or what I think the show should try to say. If you could be somebody that's very conservative, and if you're a younger person, you should run just like anyone else. Just because you're more likely to be one way or the other doesn't mean that you have to be. So yeah, so basically, my goal for this episode is I want to make sure that that we can motivate people to run who are especially who are under 40, figure out why they don't, some of the blockades that they have, and empower them to give them some resources as far as some advice and some of the websites and organizations that can help them do those first few steps in case they want to do that.
All right, perfect. And so with that being said, let's bring our guest today. He ran for Montana Public Service Commission in District 4 in 2020. Daniel Carlino, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dalen, Curtis, and Kara. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and head in. So you study at the University of Montana. You actually have a degree in environmental studies and wildlife bio. That's correct?
Yes. Yep. I just graduated last year here.
And so with that type of degree, what got you into politics? What made you want to run? Is that something your family has background in? What garnered that interest?
No, I don't have any family background in politics, and families overall more on the conservative side of politics. But after getting into environmental studies and just seeing how horrific our humans' relationship with nature has been over the past couple hundred years especially, it got me really just looking for solutions on how we can really not take us down the same path that we've been going down. And quickly realized that climate change is the overarching issue as far as any environmental problems go, and many social justice problems as well. Just having all this information of how horrible things are, it's almost like I couldn't go without taking some sort of action. So we started, a couple friends of mine and me started this Sunrise Movement group here in Montana 2 Januaries ago, where we started organizing around a Green New Deal, and we launched this No Fossil Fuel Money pledge campaign. So we were trying to take the fossil fuel money out of politics is at least one way that I saw that we could kind of change the system to where we actually are able to make the changes necessary to stop climate change. So basically I started we did a bunch of different avenues and tactics to try and get these politicians to stop taking fossil fuel money. But one that I would always do is I would go to their events, and usually during the question and answer period, I'd always try and get the microphone and then just get, basically just ask them like, why do you support these projects? Why do you support this? And will you stop taking all the money that you take from the fossil fuel industry, lobbyists, PACs, and CEOs?
What did they usually say?
Yeah, what answers did you get?
I usually get we got a So we've gotten about 20 Montana politicians to sign, but overall, I've gotten denied by at least 3 times that number.
Yeah.
And the big disappointing one was there's our U.S. Senator, Democratic U.S. Senator here, John Tester from Montana.
Right.
He ran in 2018, and he had a bunch of campaign ads, and like one of his main platforms was how he was going to take on the battle with climate change too. And then here it is, me, I helped his campaign a little bit, did some volunteering, and then here I get to finally talk to our U.S. Senator in person and ask him to sign a no fossil fuel pledge, and I asked him to stop supporting the Keystone XL pipeline. And basically he just kind of jumped around the question for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then and basically said that if he doesn't take that fossil fuel money, he's not going to win. And if he doesn't win, then we have a Republican in there instead. And he just basically... But at the same time, he has the same exact position as the Republican senator here on the Keystone XL and other big fossil fuel projects.
That's fascinating.
So, I mean, they're just so entrenched in the system that they need to take all this lobbyist money. I mean, it's not just the fossil fuel industry, too, because this same senator takes money from private prison industries and healthcare and pharmaceuticals, and, you name it. But basically...
That's definitely a part of Montana that, like... I'm not saying it's right, but I do understand their worry about it, that, they have to ride that line between like their beliefs and balancing, the other side or whatever. Because I've heard that same argument from the Republican and the Democratic side. It's definitely a risk to take any big swing either way.
Right. Yeah, but part of me just thinks that this guy in that moment, I just realized that he really doesn't care about climate change as much as he says, or is willing to take any like action himself, because like, for example, with the Keystone XL pipeline, that I was trying to get him to stop supporting, and our other Montana politicians. It's a Canadian company trying to build a pipeline through Montana, through our Native American reservations, like by their water supplies, to ship oil across the U.S. to sell it to China, and it only creates about 30 permanent jobs in Montana. So he knows this. Like it's not like he doesn't know what's going on. But I mean, his donors are telling him that he must support it, Republican or Democrat. And it was just very disheartening of a moment for me. And I had about 10 of those with like every major Democratic politician in Montana. Yeah, the one nice thing about organizing politically in Montana is that you get to pretty easily talk to all the candidates at some point. Go to their events, or at least the Democratic candidates. So I just ended up just pretty much calling out every single politician like in Montana, and it was just so frustrating. And that's kind of what mostly got me into politics in the first place. I was just working to stop climate change and seeing that the main people in the way is really just like stopping climate change is the fossil fuel industry executives, like not the workers, but just the people that are making the big decisions there, and our corrupt politicians who are just willing to let them do what they want, let these companies do what they want rather than do what's best for our climate or for our people. So.
Yeah, and as you guys can see, like Daniel talks super straightforward, intelligently about these issues. I wanted to mention that like the reason that I first started talking to Daniel was he actually called me as a voter, and we spoke for about it was about 5 to 10 minutes about climate change and about some of his ideas to fix it. And what was crazy was, you usually get the call or whatever, it'll be a robocall or it'll be, it'll be somebody helping or whatever. And they'll just say like, vote for me because you should, basically. Like that's kind of like the general gist, but but they don't always necessarily are able to really talk to you about what they believe and the really like nitty gritty of how it would work. But with Daniel, it was fascinating. I started taking notes when we were talking because he was bringing up an issue that I cared about, but I didn't even know it, until he said it. And so, so I remember thinking like, wow, like, I mean, you sounded like you had sort of a younger voice. So I kind of assumed you probably were, but either way, like I was like, wow, this is exactly the type of person, that should be in office, that, they care enough to have a 5 to 10 minute conversation, basically just nerd out about politics with you. That's amazing.
Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about the position you ran for and, what platform you ran on?
Yeah. So the Public Service Commission in Montana, at least, has a very specific job. They pretty much regulate the utility rates. The government here granted monopolies to our energy, our water, our telecommunications, railroad, and sewer and things and recycling and compost and trash and everything. So basically, each of these utilities, they're all regulated by this group of 5 people called the Public Service Commission. And they get to approve or disapprove any rate changes that these companies put forward, but they also get to have a big say of approving or disapproving any large infrastructure projects that would affect public lands or anything like that. So, my main motivation is our energy utility, because energy is the biggest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. And also our energy company here, Northwestern Energy, has been working with the Public Service Commission to pass unfair utility increases throughout the years, because we had the 4th cheapest power in the whole U.S. here before this company took over. After they took over, now we've got the most expensive, 22 years later, we have the most expensive power in the Pacific Northwest, and this company's only doubled their profits in the past 5 years and are just keep on going. And basically, they had plans with the energy monopoly, Northwestern Energy, to build 4 new gas plants in Montana within the next 5 years to double their energy portfolio. And then they're also trying to buy more of Coal Strip Unit 4, which is a coal power plant. And they're going to be buying it from this company Puget Sound, who's in Washington,
Mm-hmm.
and basically every other investor in this coal strip power plant is having to divest from it because of their state's laws with pollution or laws with emissions as well. So every company outside of Montana is pulling out of this coal-fired plant, while this company is trying to buy all of their shares because we've got looser environmental restrictions in Montana. And basically, so basically I was just running because I was the only candidate who's actually taking a stance against these gas plants.
Really?
I'm the Democratic side. It was the most frustrating thing for me. That was kind of one of my goals if I didn't win the primary, which I didn't. So one of my goals was to at least push the other candidates to take a same stance because it's a logical stance at this time. It matches up with science and matches up. There's plenty of other options on the table as well. But basically nobody else is willing to take a stance against any of the gas plants. So now now we've got no public service commission candidates, at least in this district. There is one candidate in District 3 that is taking a stance against them. But basically, nobody's there to stop these gas plants if we don't have the proper public service commission. So Northwestern Energy will be building unless something else stops them, we'll be building 4 gas plants, drilling or fracking inside of Montana by 2025. They've got one planned each year starting next year.
What's really interesting is that you had this issue that you wanted to run on, that you were passionate about. You knew a lot about it, and you found the job to run for that probably most people had no idea what they did. When you called me, my first question was, "What the heck is a PSC?" Not only did you have to explain to me what you were running for, but even I had no idea I didn't even know it existed, So it's interesting that you found the issue, and then you found the job that nobody else would even, probably have known outside of, say, the industry. And you ran for it and you gave it your best shot, because you were so passionate about that. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And a lot of people, they think that it's not worth running if they're not going to be, the mayor or something. But there's so many local offices you could run for that would make such a big difference, to your local communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think all the power needs to be built from the ground up. And on a quick side note, we were also running, I think we ran about 22 people for precinct committee officers, which is just kind of represents your neighborhood, and they help pick the delegates who pick the super delegates. So we ran 22 people for those, and against the current Missoula County Democrats who were in there. Basically, our goal was just to make sure that they can't cheat Bernie out of delegates in Montana, and about half of our precinct committee people won. So wow. And those races are only about 100 or 200 votes to decide those. And then my public service commission district was 1/5 of the state.
What would you say, so being the age that you are, what would you say is the biggest attribute and and also the biggest maybe consequence of being a younger politician?
So I guess the biggest attribute would be that I think I was able to reach a different crowd. I was tabling at the university here, trying to pull in some of the student vote as much as I could before coronavirus started. Obviously, had to stop reaching out to voters like that. But I think I got a lot of young people to vote in a race that they would never vote in, especially in a primary. And I think that was just from pretty much just me getting around and talking to people about this. I think, especially with the younger crowd, they'd be more willing to talk to me about stuff like this, the climate change, and a position that they've never heard of, rather than a lawyer who's in their 50s or 60s that's trying to talk to them about the issues. So
what do you think was the greatest drawback?
I think the greatest drawback was that I pretty much had to really work for all my votes. I had to really, like you said, I had that good conversation with you. But at first glance, I definitely don't seem like the right choice to most people, because you look at, on one hand, you have a lawyer who has 20 years of working in front of the Public Service Commission on different cases, and she's in favor of renewable energy. And then you have me, who's also in favor of renewable energy, but so young. But then when you look further into the race, then you see I'm the only candidate who's like actually taking a stance against all these gas plants, and they're literally trying to double their portfolio. So I guess like the main advantage is that like at first glance, for most voters, they just seems like she would be the obvious choice. And rather than like looking at the issues, it's much easier to just like disregard somebody who's, especially if you're a decades older than me, then you must just like think I'm way too young to be a politician, and then just not be. I just feel like I had to work for my votes a lot more, as in like having the actual conversations.
How did you change people's minds who had that worry about your experience? Did you have an argument that seemed to, connect with, say, older voters who were worried about that?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I basically would try and bring it back to the policy issues every single time. But there was we did do one Democratic debate. There was 3 of us in there at one point. And for the closing statement, the Monica, who ended up winning this race, she was just basically saying in her closing statement that the Public Service Commission has a really high learning curve, and she's the only person that knows how to do the job in such the right time. And then I was like, okay. And then I got to do my closing statement, and I said something along the lines of, experience means nothing if you have the wrong vision of what needs to be done to stop the climate crisis and to get everybody their utilities in Montana. And then she also worked for this energy company for one rate case where she helped. She worked for them as a lawyer and helped beat a bunch of environmental people in this energy conservation case.
Interesting.
So then the next thing I said was just experience working for Northwestern Energy is not good experience. And then I just went and then I just went back to
mic drop. Yeah.
Taking some jabs.
Yeah, just because, I feel like people need to know that stuff. It's very relevant, and I just want people to at least know what they're voting for. So I was trying to get the point across in the debate that if you vote for either of these 2 older candidates, you're going to get gas plants in Montana. They're going to drill and frack for gas in Montana, or you can vote for me, and I will be a strong voice and vote against all of that. And that works for a lot of voters, but some people, don't care about the issues as much.
Daniel, you may have kind of just touched on this, but we talked about this in our last episodes, just the barriers that people face trying to get into politics, whether that be kind of the internalized doubt or the systemic blockades or the financial aspect. So I'm curious, when you started, embarking on this journey, what was the biggest barrier to you, and what did you feel like, dang, if I just had, more donors, or if I just had more people who believed in young voters, I'd have a better shot at this, or I'd feel more confident about this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was definitely 2 big barriers that come to mind, and definitely one of them was money. I did end up raising about $15,000 for the campaign, which was I was very happy with. Mostly just from doing events and just basically having to ask people for money at the end of the day after I could tell that they're into my campaign.
We were talking about that in the last episode. How many people our age know somebody that can just write us, a $10,000 check? Like, that's not something that's realistic.
Yeah. So I was exactly. So I had hundreds of donors, but everybody who's donating to my opponent would all just donate the max amount, and then she ended up raising about $100,000. So there's that huge barrier of not having money to send out mailers and not having money to compete with ads and stuff like that.
What was the average donation that you had?
It was around $40, I think.
Wow, okay.
I did have a lot of donations that were like $3 or $5, but the max was $180. So I mean, I did get a couple dozen people that would donate me the max as well, and even people I've never met, which was really great. And then the other big barrier, so money was one big barrier to running, but it's only because I had a fifth of the state. If it was a local office, it could be done with very little money. Just by knocking everybody's door and reaching out via phone. But the other big barrier in my campain...
Daniel, real quick, actually. So you've mentioned that a fifth of the state, and I believe it's District 4.
Yes.
What does that encompass, I guess?
Yeah, so District 4 basically goes on the western border of Montana, It's the big. They kind of have. They take the 5 biggest cities in Montana and kind of make PSC districts out of that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So 2/3 of my voters were actually in Missoula County, which is where I live. So I've got 2/3 of the voters there, but then I had 6 other rural counties that go up to the northwestern corner of the Canada and Idaho and Montana border, and then down to the bottom left corner. The next biggest city was Hamilton. But I did some canvassing in every county, and I think I did an event in 5 of the counties out of the 7. But I'd have to drive like 4 hours to get to the top of my district, and
right,
and then to come back down. And I also would have been really nice to have a super volunteer in each county to be able to hold down some organizing there. But I feel like most of my organizing was just going on in Missoula, just since that's where I've got most of the connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, and then I was just going to say the other downfall of the other thing that I think was a big barrier in my campaign was that I was knocking everybody's doors for months and months with volunteers and doing it together. But while I'm doing that, my opponent was basically just meeting with every Democratic politician in Montana and former politicians, and then just racking up endorsements from every single one of them. And then they would send out emails to their lists, yada, yada, yada. And she basically just got about 100 endorsements from different Democratic candidates. And there was a couple that endorsed me, but I wasn't really trying for endorsements, and I definitely should have, because she just basically got every Democrat to endorse her and without any of them talking to me even about my campaign.
I know endorsements are super important. I understand that they are, but personally speaking, I've never voted or not voted for somebody based on an endorsement. I don't totally get why people put so much stock into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. It can be a little silly. There's a lot of backroom stuff going on.
Right.
I feel like it's if you don't want to do the research on the people that you're voting for, you often turn to, well, this is the politician I do like, and this is who they're endorsing.
It's well, John Tester likes her, so I guess.
They did the research for you. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And there was just so much of that going on against me. It was pretty hard. After they just all racked up with so many endorsements.
What would you say was the best use of your money? The smallest amount that got you the most attention and votes? I
probably would say the phone banking program. I spent money on all sorts of things, but once coronavirus hit, I kind of had to cancel our plan for just a big canvas, a big push for canvassing. Yeah. And I used to use the Bernie dialer, where you can just basically call people much faster. Mm-hmm. So I just set up the same program that Bernie had with his Bernie dialer on my website and things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it would make it to where basically anybody could just easily phone bank for my campaign. And then we were able to have, we would do phone banks on Zoom pretty much every day at the last month and a half. Mm-hmm. And we probably had about 30 or 40 different people come on and phone bank with me, which was really great. And I think that only costs total, we probably spent $100, and we dialed 8,000 people, but you only really get into a conversation with maybe 1,500 of those people. But that was a good use of money, definitely. And just these little walk cards, flyers that I've been giving out. Mm-hmm. I printed 15,000 of those a long time ago. And we almost made it through all of them, but coronavirus definitely didn't help.
Yeah. Right.
We would just leave those at people's doors and give them to people after I talked to people about my campaign, and use them for canvassing, and basically just try to get those all around town and to as many people's hands as I could.
What was the name of the Bernie dialer again?
It's a program called Through Talk, and
I didn't know that.
Wait, maybe not Through Talk actually. I can't remember right this second.
Yeah, I'm blanking on it too. I actually even did a little bit of help for the Bernie campaign on it. I'm totally blanking on what it's called right this second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't used it for over a month now, but on my website I just called it the Carlino caller.
Yeah, that's great.
That's fantastic. So Daniel, you've mentioned a handful of times how obviously the coronavirus put a big wrench in your campaign. But one thing I've been reading up doing research on the show is just how advantageous social media is for younger people running for office. You know, there's a quote from this Q&A that I read where Instagram is to AOC what radio was to FDR and what, television was to JFK. In what ways, if any, did you use social media to help you through, campaigning during Corona?
And how successful was it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it definitely helped a lot. I would say, because that's all free advertising, and I started my campaign last July. I think I launched it, and I didn't end up making my Instagram for my account until like December, which I should have done earlier. But by the time election was coming, I had like 1,500 or so followers on Instagram, and then I messaged literally every single one of them to try and, or I think almost all of them, to try and talk to them. And then I think I had like 600 or so on Facebook, the PSC page. But yeah, like my older opponents, I think they tried to also make social media accounts, and their Instagram would just have like 40 or 50 people on there. So it definitely helped. And then like just asking people to share the stuff around. But another big thing that helped with social media for me is just I've just been organizing in Missoula around climate and at our university and with many different groups here. So I just already had a lot of connections in the organizing community in Missoula beforehand. So that also really helped, just like being able to let other organizations also push out my social media stuff too. And just kind of basically asking everybody for help via social media, just like letting them know that it really helps to share my stuff. So please share it all. And I think we reached a lot of people.
It's funny. When Curtis first mentioned you to me, I, did some Googling, looked up your name. And then like a couple days later, I'm scrolling innocently through Facebook, and all of a sudden there's a Daniel Carlino ad. I was like, hey, it works.
Yeah. They can probably tell that you Googled it.
How much, if any, do you think would have affected the turnout for your race, or say specifically to vote your voters who would have voted for you if Bernie had still been running when the Montana primary happened?
I think it definitely would have helped a little bit. I think I definitely needed to have sent a mailer out to everybody at the end, but that was going to cost a lot of money. I think, Bernie in the progressive wave, getting all the excitement definitely was helping my campaign. And then when he dropped out, it was a little bit, because I was organizing for Bernie like pretty consistently here in Missoula, and we were like holding events and stuff. So it was just kind of a sad moment, first of all, when he dropped out, that realizing that we're not going to have a Green New Deal right now, or some of these things that Bernie was proposing. I think it definitely hurt a little bit, but I wouldn't have affected the election too much. But a lot of people did tell me that I should like endorse Bernie on my PSC page and things. And I mean, I was like pretty flamboyantly like a Bernie supporter anyhow, but I think it would have helped a little bit.
The reason I asked was, I heard a lot of, I read a lot of stories and heard a lot of people talking about how, the fallout of Bernie dropping out when he did, even though it was probably necessary, it also like was really going to negatively affect a lot of progressive candidates down the ballot. There was a big thing in New York, and I think it was New York State, where they had to fight to keep him on the ballot, even though he wasn't like even running. And a lot of people were like, well, why would we do that? And the reason was, there's a lot of people that are progressives that are going to be disheartened and are not going to come out unless Bernie's an option, if he's not even on the ticket, so.
He was luckily on the ticket here in Montana, so I got to vote for him this time.
Right. Let's see. What attributes do you think makes a good politician? Is there anything that you would recommend? If somebody out there is listening, who's maybe on the fence, they kind of feel like they might want to run for something, what would you ask them to see if they're a good choice?
Right. I remember this quote my philosophy teacher told us once, that anybody who wants to be in power shouldn't be in power,
That's fascinating. That's a good one.
So I thought that was interesting. So I think definitely something that all new politicians and new candidates, I think, could have is really just like standing for issues and something that you want to get done rather than just wanting to get into office. I don't know. I think just like really focusing in on like why you're running and like what you want to accomplish, because a lot of people get into office and then just kind of want to be like the Democrat or the Republican on there and just stand with their party. But I mean, there's just a lot of work to do for trying to, fix some of the social injustices in our country. So I think a good candidate would have, be passionate and have issues that they really want to solve and policies that they're willing to fight for. But I think the more like average people that run for office, I guess average as in not part of like the two-party establishment, is great. Like just like most politicians just get taken away by the party telling them what to do or their donors. And I just think people just having stuff that they stand for and are passionate about, like getting done, rather than just wanting to be in office, I think is really important. So I mean, like for me, it was really climate change that got me to want to run, and then just seeing what was going on here. But I mean, I'm really want to help with all these issues, like the economic injustices, the racial injustices, everything. But yeah, climate is really like the one that made me feel like I'm not just going to sit back and watch these people do the same old.
Beyond just caring about an issue, what can we do to incentivize more younger people to run for office? Meaning not necessarily like monetarily. I just mean like, how can we make a connection more between for the average person, especially average younger person? How can we make that connection between you should run for office because the reward will be, say a better world or whatever? Like how can we make that connection with more people?
Right. I think just like really letting the younger people know that they are powerful and like
that's such a good statement right there.
Yeah, I don't know. Just that's the main thing that comes to mind. Like what your work is worthwhile, and we can like actually make some huge changes. And then really just whenever you know that there's a younger candidate running, just reaching out to them and seeing how you can help. Connecting them with organizations. But yeah, like AOC won when she was 29 against like a 15-year incumbent. Many other people are also running for office for big offices like that at a young age. I think the amount that you said of millennials that ran for legislature in 2018 sounded awesome, and I bet there was even more this year. And yeah, I just people can do it. It's definitely possible. Yeah, and it's just like it's our future at stake, and if we're just going to watch these people that are at average age of almost 70 running our country, we're not going to see any change. So really got to step up.
Absolutely. That might be a good segue, Dalen, to some of the websites and organizations that are actually out there that help incentivize and help basically just help people get into politics when they're brand new to it.
Yeah, I guess, going, Daniel, why don't you tell us what were the first steps that you took? Like you said, you didn't really have much experience in politics before. What were the steps that you took to start running?
Yeah. So basically we took a bus full of people to go comment to the Public Service Commission about this 20-year energy plan that Northwestern Energy was trying to do. And I just, I got up there and said my comments to them and just had 5 like very old people, like the guy that was in my seat here for PSC is in his 80s, just staring at me with a blank face as we fill this room with hundreds of people all commenting against their plan. And then these guys just get to all stare at us in their suits and then go home and do the exact opposite. And right there is where I decided to run. And that was, it was right after commenting, I was just like, oh my goodness, this guy is 80 years old. He doesn't believe in climate change. It just does whatever the energy company wants. So I just decided to run. And I guess I was already pretty involved with organizing with my Sunrise Movement group here. So The very first thing I did was reach out to my friend who I know builds websites, and then he helped me build a website. And then I just kind of started building my platform, just kind of typing it up on what I'm going to run for. And then my other friend is a videographer, so we just made like a little campaign video to get going. But
it was a good video, by the way.
Oh,
it's a very good video.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really fun making. And then, so I did those two things, but I still had really no strategy. So I just started to basically email everybody who I know just like does political, who worked on other people's campaigns around Missoula, and then just, met with them and showed them my website and video and just told them that I was about to launch my campaign. And then I got one guy who has been organizing around here for about 15 or 20 years, who came to speak at one of my Sunrise events a long time ago. He kind of helped manage my campaign the first 5 or 6 months, and then I took it over from there. But you kind of just need one person who's ran campaigns in your same, like where you live, just like in your community. If you have a community organizer who believes in you as a person and is willing to help lay out a campaign plan for you, I think is like the real first step. My friend Andy, who's helping me manage my campaign, he gave me like a 14 or so page campaign plan before I launched it, and then just a plan for voter outreach and things. But at the end of the day, like campaigning is mostly, especially at a local level, is just kind of talking to people about these issues and just kind of making a plan to talk to everybody, basically, and then another plan to reach out to them once or twice more with a mailer or text or social media. We made a plan to just try and reach out to people in at least 5 different ways, like yard signs, social media, emails, and talking, canvassing, and phone banking and whatnot. So I guess the first thing would just be finding somebody who's already done it there in wherever you live, and who's already worked on some campaigns and just that believes in you. And if you don't know somebody like that, then or aren't able to find somebody like that, I would reach out to the local Sunrise Movement group there, or any other similar groups that are
what is Sunrise Group? You mentioned it a couple of times. I actually don't know what that is. What is that?
Yeah. So the Sunrise Movement is basically their tagline is we're building an army of young people to help stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. And it got started in 2017, but now there's about 400 or so hubs across the country. So they're in most places. Yeah. So I helped get the one started here in Missoula, and basically our ultimate goal is working for a Green New Deal, and basically a 10-year mobilization to stop climate change through policy and rebuild our economy to where we put the frontline, the most vulnerable communities at the forefront of every decision. So I guess kind of basically we're a group of young people that takes direct action, mostly focused on politicians to try and get them to, change their ways and ideally endorse a Green New Deal. So I guess it's a lot to explain, but basically we're just trying to we look back at like past social movements that have worked, and we try to replicate that in the fight for what's going on now.
I wonder how many people from that movement Joe Biden will attract, since he just announce like the $2 trillion policy to basically convert the country to 100% renewable and electric energy by like 2050. I wonder how many people that will attract from that movement.
I think it's starting to help. At least here in Missoula, most of us are pretty anti-Joe Biden, but people might still vote for him anyway, just to remove Trump out of there. But,
that's what I was going to say too. It might be the opposite. It might be. I wonder how many people in that movement it took to get Joe Biden to commit to that.
That's true, and that's very true. I stand corrected. That's very true.
And there's actually a couple of videos of some people from Sunrise, from our Sunrise Movement group, talking to Joe Biden months and months ago, and there's this one video where he said, "Well, you ought to vote for somebody else." And then, but Varshini, is one of the directors for Sunrise Movement nationally, and she's on Joe Biden's climate force or climate team or whatever it is. I think Bernie Sanders is on there too, but she was part of helping push him for that plan. But right now, Sunrise Movement is just kind of saying like, obviously we have to remove Trump, and is kind of what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we know that we wanted Bernie because Sunrise Movement nationally endorsed Bernie, but we're just going to keep pushing Joe and like to push him towards the left until he matches up with some of these things. But it's just tough when Joe Biden takes his donators are like over 100 billionaires, pretty much all the different industry lobbyists. So it's just kind of tough to sway somebody that already has all these other people in their ear.
Yeah, and just to be clear too, to the listeners again, like, even though we're talking a lot about the liberal side of gaining traction and grassroots, running for campaigns and stuff, we're not trying to alienate somebody who say is on the conservative side of this. So I do want to name a few different organizations that are at least somewhat bipartisan. I mean, it's true that almost all millennial groups do lean liberal because compared especially to baby boomers, most millennials are quite a bit more middle or liberal than the olders.
And as I mentioned in the last episode, it's seeing more and more that younger, Republicans, younger conservatives are separating themselves quite a bit from the GOP. Right.
Well, one of the ones I wanted to make sure I mentioned was it's an organization called the Millennial Action Project, or MAP, M-A-P. It's a group that supports candidacies of those under 45. And the quote from their website was, as a national nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to activating millennial policymakers, MAP gives our nation's young leaders the resources and support to create, introduce, and pass legislation. Wow, I can't even say that word for some reason. And forge productive partnerships on the issues affecting the youngest generation of Americans. And they have an absolutely amazing list of reforms that they've assisted in passing already. And I don't think they've been around for that long. So I definitely encourage anyone listening to check out the Millennial Action or MAP organization to help you get started and align yourself with other young people who might be running, whether or not you're liberal or conservative or somewhere in the middle.
Right.
The other. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, on that note too. One person that I'm partnering up with here is one of the conservatives on city council, but he's also only 29 years old, so he's pretty young. And he also goes up against, from the left or the right, you can go up against the corrupt system and still fix things. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a really cool, not from the candidate side, but from the voting side, just getting young people interested in voting, that I really wanted to give a shout out to. It's a website and an organization called HeadCount. And what they do is they sign people up to vote at concerts. With the permission of the artist. A lot of times the artist will give kind of a shout out to them, like on stage, saying, hey, if you care about the world, go vote, and you can go right outside and do that. And the cool part about it is if you help with this organization, you also get in to see whatever concert it is for free. And they have some pretty amazing shows that they do. Of course, they've been kind of shut down a little bit because of coronavirus, but they're just a really cool nonpartisan organization that gets people voting.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's the young people are voting, I think, is what their slogan is. So I thought that was awesome. And do you guys know who knows what November 12th is? It's the Tuesday after Election Day. Anybody know?
November.
I don't know.
Isn't that
Daniel? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Isn't it the National Run for Office Day or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's National Run for Office Day. It was, I believe it was started pretty recently, but there's actually a runforofficeday.com. And if you're thinking about running for any office, whether it be a local or state or maybe even national office, they have some resources to help you help you get started, especially if you're starting from the very beginning. And it's really been trying to encourage new people to get into politics, so we don't just get the same people over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, that's all my plugs. I'm sorry.
No,
I just wanted to make sure that they got mentioned.
There are so many resources and so many people that you can talk to get, just get involved, like in any way. There's so many resources out there that you can touch base with, that whether it's, partisan, bipartisan, whatever it may be. It's always great to just get involved in the community and, in your state, in your country. Like, it's, as many people say, and it's, cliche, it's your civic duty, as a citizen. So it's just a great thing to do, and it can be scary, but, look at Daniel. He's a great example of somebody who saw an issue. He wanted to get involved. He started small and saw that, okay, well, if they're not going to make change, why don't I try? And even though he didn't, win his candidacy, win the primary, he was able to set examples, put forth these issues, and really point out things that maybe the public didn't have a chance to see ahead of time. And, he was able to make a difference in that way. And that's kind of the benefit of being young and running for office, is you got a lot of years ahead of you.
Right. Daniel, what are you going to be doing next? Are you going to run for office again, for another office? What's your plans?
Yeah. My plan is to, looks like there's an open city council seat here for next year. So my plan is to launch another campaign in January for that city council seat. And it's pretty nice because I've already pretty much canvassed my whole city council district and talked to most of those people. So I think that's my next plan. I won't be able to work on climate change as much from there, but I'll be able to help with economic justice and many other different issues, housing, and just getting people their basic needs from a city council spot. So, I'm definitely not done. I'm still fired up after that first campaign, and running for the second time. I've already got all this groundwork already laid out, where a lot of these people already will know me, that will be in my district, or that are in my district, or I already talked to them about my last campaign, or they already voted for me. So I think there's a lot of groundwork there, and I'm definitely not ready to give up the fight for, until we win, really, until I get some of these like big changes, at least being able to stop climate change. So I'm going to keep it up.
All right. So we're coming up on time here. I've got one more question, but before I ask it, Kara, Curtis, do you guys have anything? Kara, do you have anything to ask for Daniel?
I think the only other question I have, it was so great to hear from you. It was super interesting. I think we've all learned a lot. I want to know from your opinion, kind of starting to wade through those trenches of being a young politician, do you think that the people currently in office can represent us well, or do you think that millennials and Gen Z need to get out there to be represented fairly?
Oh, I think millennials and Gen Z definitely need to get out there. More women in politics, I think, would also help a lot. And younger people, more women, more people of color. Just basically these old white men in suits was the problem with our PSC, and it's basically gotten us to where we are today. So I really just encourage, I think that's definitely going to need to happen if we're trying to see any systematic change. It's not going to happen with the older generations. So I really highly encourage as many young people to take a shot at it. And if anybody is doing it in Missoula or in Montana, I'm definitely a good person to reach out to help get you started as well.
We talked about, you bring up women in government, and we talked about it in the last episode, but just some, statistics to throw your way. So it's pretty obvious that women who serve in office are just continually and consistently underrepresented at all levels. And so and this is from a Pew research report, and it's 20% of U.S. senators are women, as are 18% of House members, and that at the state level, only 10% of governors and 24% of state legislators are women.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's
and while the majority of our country is women, so
I know it's it's staggering.
Yeah. I think the point that was made in the last episode was we just need to be better represented by a wider variety of people, whether it be by sex or by, say, sexuality or by color, by age, we just, it's like, we don't want to necessarily, I don't want to necessarily say tell someone who's older that they shouldn't run just because they're older. Like if they're the best candidate, they should win. But we definitely need to encourage a wider variety of people to get out there, and to really just shake it up a little bit, because all that can happen is you make some kind of a difference in people's mind, and slowly but surely things are going to start changing, and they already are.
Especially when Gen Z and Millennial generation are the most diverse generations that the country's ever seen. So the last question, Daniel, I know you wanted to touch base on this, but what do you think about the PSC's role in regulating the energy industry in Montana, and how could they do better?
Yeah. So right now so I guess to start with that question, I used to think that the energy company made money off of giving us energy and providing people energy, but it turns out that's not the case. The energy companies, well, not for the most of their money. The energy company is making money off of things that they own. And the Public Service Commission here in Montana granted them 11.5% return on equity on everything that they own. So regardless of how much energy you use, we're all paying for this company to own their gas plants, to own their coal plants, and so on and so forth. And the Public Service Commission basically granted a $407 million evaluation for Northwestern Energy's share of Colstrip, even though Northwestern Energy only paid about $180 million for it. So since they over-evaluated it, the Public Service Commission over-evaluated this coal plant by up to $407 million, people have been paying that 11.5% return on equity based off of that evaluation every year since 2008.
Wow.
So basically, So basically here in Montana, for one of our basic needs, everybody has to use energy to survive in this society. We're paying this company $40 million in profits off of a bad decision by the Public Service Commission every single year. And that's only because there's a bunch of backdoor deals going on, and Northwestern Energy helped with their campaigns and stuff like that. But this company, the Public Service Commission is just really not favoring the public here at all. They're just kind of subservient to the monopoly's interests. And so that's a big issue. Basically, they've just been allowing these companies to take advantage of Montanans on something that's a basic need that everybody needs. So ultimately, I believe, and you can't really do this from the Public Service Commission. This would have to be a law passed. But I believe in public ownership of our utilities to eliminate these for-profit monopolies like Northwestern Energy. They would be eliminated, and then it would be a government-owned energy grid. And the reasoning for that is because they wouldn't be making the $200 million in profits that they make every year off of people's basic needs like energy, but instead that money would just go towards lowering everybody's energy bills. Also, the other thing with public ownership is that I think we would get to a renewable energy transition much faster because the energy company is just focused on their next quarterly profits rather than what's best for our environment, our future, and everything like that. So if it's publicly owned, then people would have more of a say in what happens there as well. But basically, the Public Service Commission in Montana has just been allowing Northwestern Energy to get away with whatever they want. And that's the big issue. They're not putting the public first.
The crazy thing is if it can happen in Montana, I feel like that can basically happen anywhere. I bet
it must be.
What state you're in right now, listening to this, I bet there is something that you can fix that, that doing in a job you probably have never heard of if you just tried. And I think that would be hopefully the takeaway of the episode.
Well, and I wonder if it's easy for them to hold that monopoly, being that Montana's population is, about 1 million in the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's easier or harder. I'm not sure.
Something to look into.
It's hard to say, but originally they're able to have that monopoly just because the government granted it a monopoly.
Which seems wild to me.
I mean, the same thing happens in California with PG&E, I'm not sure if it really has to do with necessarily the population. I think it has more to do with the awareness that the general public has of these backdoor deals.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Right. Yeah. So I at least tried to bring that up as much as I could to people. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I got more of the public here to be a little bit against the PSC and Northwestern Energy and seeing that they're getting screwed over.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Good
there's
for
a lot
you.
of work to be done there.
So
Good for you, Daniel.
just before we go, just
Thanks.
because I haven't lived in Montana for a couple years now, I know while I was in school from 2014 to 2018. I took a it was like intro to climate change class, and it was a fascinating class, and we talked a lot about like carbon reduction incentives and solar power incentives for residential homes or residents in Montana, and carbon emission reduction for businesses, and specifically for Northwestern Energy. Has there been any progress in that, working with Northwestern Energy on like carbon caps, carbon tax, anything like that I guess you've seen?
Yeah, a lot of people are proposing carbon taxes and things like that. Well, basically, Northwestern Energy's plan right now, they have their emissions chart on their 20-year energy plan,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows that their emissions per energy unit used are going to basically go, I think, they're going to basically get cut down in the next 20 years by something like 5%. And then they're also doubling their energy portfolio with all these new gas plants. So really, their emissions are going to go up in the next 20 years if they get to do
Right.
their plan. And interesting that you brought up the carbon tax too, because I used to think of that as like it's probably part of the solution, but I met with one of Northwestern Energy's representatives who helped write that plan, and I talked to him about a carbon tax. I said, how high would a carbon tax have to be for you to change your plan and not build these gas plants? And he said it would have to be really, really, really abnormally extremely high, and then we're probably not going to change it. He was like, yeah, we're not going to change it.
Sometimes
Yeah,
I guess you have to pick your battles.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Gosh
That's
dang.
crazy.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was fascinating to hear your perspectives and hear your experience, running as a young person for office. So, Kara Curtis, any closing remarks for Daniel?
I hope you keep going, Daniel. I'll vote for you in whatever job you run for.
Oh, thanks. Thank you all for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. If anything comes up, I'll keep in contact with you, and we'll let you know when the episode posts, and we'll make sure to, let you know so you can tag or do whatever you want with it on social media.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Daniel. All right. So that was a really fun conversation, I thought. I thought he had a lot of really interesting and fun things to say, especially coming from personal experience.
Yeah, he's a
I
well
realized I
acknowledged.
was muted just then. I'm sorry. I was like talking about the bar. I was still not listening to me.
No, it was just talking to Dan, hearing from his personal experience because, in episode 1, we talked so much about like, oh, well, this is how it affects them. This is how blah, blah. But hearing it from somebody who actually did it is really fascinating to hear.
Yeah, no, it was super interesting.
He's an absolute well of knowledge. I was so impressed talking to him initially. I was so impressed talking to him now. Exactly the type of person that we need in office. Like I said, pretty much, I don't care what he's running for. I mean, it just seems like the type of person that would run would run for an office that he cares about, that would, he would have something that he's fighting for, and isn't interested in all these special backdoor deals and stuff that ends up happening. So that's just, it's really nice to talk to somebody who sort of encompasses all of what, say, a politician of any age should be.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, that will do it for part 2 of The Young and the Political. Episode 6, guys. We're moving on to episode 7. We're not sure what it's going to be at this point, but we'll talk about that and figure it out. If you want to, it's going to be great because we're professionals. If you want to get a hold of us, shoot us an email at pwbnetwork@gmail.com. If you want to check out our website, go to podcastswithoutborders.com. You can also look us up on Facebook that way, as well as I just started an Instagram for us. You can check out Instagram at Podcast Without Borders as well. I'm not sure how active I'm going to be on it. I'll, post here and there, but follow us. Give us a follow because, any, I guess, public display of our network and our show helps. And make sure you write us a review. Let us know what you think. Let us know what we can improve on. Let us know what you like most of all. and go ahead and just give us 5 stars. Write your review, but just give us 5 stars. And then, we will provide even better content because you gave us 5 stars and it makes us feel good. So
how it works is 5 stars is the best rating you can get. But if you hate us, it actually starts over again. So 5 stars is also if you hate us.
There we go. That's how this works, guys. It's a 5 out of 5 scale. So with that being said, Curtis, Kara, anything to plug for this episode?
I got nothing.
No, nothing crazy. Just like I always say, be good to each other. Like we were talking in the last episode, definitely vote when it's your time to vote. And
vote.
And the main thing I would love for somebody to do is listen to this episode and actually run for something. Actually give a damn. That'd be great.
Be good. Kara, are you tired? You sound tired.
Me?
Yeah.
She's a little sleepy.
All right, guys.
Not an easy environment to work in.
That's fair. On that note, let's close it out. So we'll talk to y'all in episode 7. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Social Discord, part of the Podcast Without Borders Network. You can get a hold of us by sending us an email at pwbnetwork@gmail.com. You can also check out our website at podcastwithoutborders.com. Thanks for listening.
Er führt durch die Straßen,